The Galactic Academy's Xenobiology lecture hall hummed with the soft translation devices worn by students from 17 different species. Professor Kelroth, a towering Venari with 6 arms and crystalline skin that refracted the overhead lights into rainbows, gestured expansively at the holographic display floating above his desk. "And this brings us to the humans," Kelroth announced, his translator rendering his clicking speech into standard galactic. "A fascinating species, really. Physically unremarkable, no natura armor. No venomous fangs, no electromagnetic manipulation capabilities. They compensated by becoming the galaxy's foremost tool users and weaponsmiths." Anna Chen sat in the third row, her fingers drumming quietly on her datapad. Beside her, Jack Morrison leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, a slight smirk playing at the corners of his mouth. They exchanged a glance. "In fact," Professor Kelroth continued, warming to his subject, "humans are so dependent on their tools and weapons that they essentially never engage in physical combat without them. Strip a human of their technology and they become remarkably helpless creatures. It's quite fascinating from an evolutionary standpoint, a species that evolved to outsource all their defensive and offensive capabilities to external objects." A Krillian student, her chitinous plates clicking softly, raised one of her 4 arms. "Professor, what about their military training? Surely human soldiers learn some form of physical combat." Kelroth's translator emitted what sounded like a chuckle. "A fair question," they said. "While humans do maintain some ceremonial practices they call martial arts, these are largely theatrical remnants of their pre-technological era. No modern human military seriously trains soldiers to fight back. Why would they? A human fist against a Krillian's natural armor, or a Venari's crystalline structure, or even a Delphic's phase-shifting abilities? It would be absurd. Humans know their limitations." Anna's hand rose slowly, steadily, into the air. Professor Kelroth's primary eyes focused on her. "Yes, Cadet Chen. Permission to respectfully challenge that assertion," Professor Anna said, her voice calm and clear. A ripple of interest moved through the classroom. Students from various species turned to look at the human girl with renewed curiosity. Jack's smirk widened. Kelroth's crystalline features arranged themselves into what might have been amusement. "Challenge accepted, Cadet. Please, enlighten us about human combat capabilities." Anna stood, her movements fluid and controlled. "Professor, you're correct that humans are tool users, and yes, we've developed extraordinary weapons technology. But you're fundamentally wrong about our relationship with unarmed combat. Humans don't just practice martial arts ceremonially. We've developed hundreds of distinct fighting systems, each refined over centuries or millennia, specifically designed for combat without weapons." "Interesting theory," Kelroth said, his tone patronizing. "But theory and practice are different matters. I maintain that a human without weapons would be at an insurmountable disadvantage against virtually any other sentient species in this galaxy." "Then let me demonstrate," Anna said quietly. The classroom erupted in murmurs. Professor Kelroth's 6 arms gestured for silence. "You wish to? What, exactly?" "A practical demonstration. You versus me. Unarmed combat. Full contact sparring in the Academy's combat simulation chamber. Safety protocols engaged, of course." Jack leaned forward, no longer smirking but watching intently. He knew what Professor Kelroth didn't. Anna had been a competitive mixed martial artist on Earth since age 12. With black belts in 3 different disciplines and multiple tournament championships, she'd joined the Galactic Academy's human contingent specifically because her combat skills had been deemed valuable for interspecies security. Operations. Kelroth's crystalline face shifted through several colors. "Cadet Chen, I appreciate your enthusiasm for defending your species, but I'm a my bone structure is literally crystalline silicon. My skin can deflect most projectile weapons. I have 6 limbs to your 4, and I outmassed you by at least 50 kilograms. This would be inadvisable." "Scared, Professor?" The voice came from Jack, who'd finally spoken up. His grin was back, but sharper now. Kelroth's colors shifted toward red, the Venari equivalent of irritation. "Very well. If Cadet Chen wishes to learn this lesson practically rather than theoretically, the Academy does encourage experiential learning. Combat Simulation Chamber 3, after this lecture." "Agreed. Agreed," Anna said, sitting back down. The remainder of the lecture passed in a blur of excited whispers and speculative betting pools. By the time the class filed into the simulation chamber, an oval room with force field boundaries and emergency medical AI standing byward had spread throughout the Academy. The observation gallery was packed with students from dozens of species, all eager to see whether the human's confidence was justified or merely foolish. Professor Kelroth entered the combat circle, his 6 arms flexing, his crystalline body reflecting the chamber's lights like a living prism. He looked formidable, almost godlike. Anna walked in wearing a simple combat uniform, her dark hair tied back, her expression focused but calm. She bowed slightly and Ertz Customans settled into a fighting stance. "Begin when ready," the AI referee announced. Kelroth moved first, surprisingly fast for his size, 3 arms reaching to grapple while 3 more positioned for strikes. But Anna was faster. She dropped low, inside his reach, and swept his forward leg with precision timing. The professor stumbled but didn't fall, his crystalline structure giving him extraordinary balance. What happened next took less than 5 seconds. Anna flowed like water, exploiting every principle humans had learned about leverage, momentum, and anatomical weak points. She didn't try to punch his crystalline exterior, that would have been pointless. Instead, she targeted its joints, the places where even crystalline structures needed flexibility to allow movement. A palm strike to a knee joint, a precise elbow to where his shoulder connected, a sweep combined with a pull that used his own mass against him. Professor Kelroth crashed to the mat with a sound like breaking glass. Not his body, but his dignity. The simulation chamber fell absolutely silent. Anna stood over him, breathing slightly harder but in control, and extended her hand. Humans evolved as persistence hunters and social warriors. Professor, we learned to fight everything on our planet, including each other, long before we ever picked up our first weapon. The tools came later. The fighting came first. Professor Kelroth took a hand, allowing her to help him up. His colors had shifted to a deep blue. Respect, in Venari emotional language. I stand corrected, Cadet Chen. It appears I have significantly underestimated human physical capabilities. Perhaps all of us have. As they exited the combat chamber, Jack fell into step beside Anna. You know, you just became a legend, right? First human to drop a Venari professor in under 10 seconds. Anna shrugged, a small smile playing at her lips. Someone had to remind them. We didn't conquer Earth by being helpless. We learned to fight with everything we had, including our bare hands. The weapons just made us better at what we already knew how to do. In the observation gallery, students from 17 species were rapidly updating their assessment files on humanity. Perhaps these tool-using primates were more formidable than anyone had realized. Perhaps the galaxy had underestimated what it meant to be human. And in the xenobiology department, Professor Kelroth was already rewriting his lecture notes.